Good evening, everybody, and happy May Day.
No, that's good.
Yes. A real May Day. So welcome to the 40th Annual Toronto Socialist Action May Day celebration. Yes, and I've been here for all of them. I was just a kid, of course, when I started. We acknowledge that this gathering takes place in the unceded territories of the Mississauga, New Credit, and Haudenosaunee people, and on Indigenous lands of Turtle Island. We join in the fight for justice, recognizing that there can be no real reconciliation without restitution. That entails seizing the assets of the big resource corporation and returning them to the commons. Around the world, millions are marking the occasion on the streets. Workers demand proper health care, a living wage for all, an end to the tariff war, and an end to the genocide in Palestine. We insist on an end to the U.S. Zionist war in Iran, the NATO war in Ukraine, the destruction of the environment, and determination of big business rule. Capitalism is the prime source of all that's wrong in the world. My name is Elizabeth Byce. I'm a retired member of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers and a leading member of Socialist Action in Euros tonight. Currently, we are celebrating the 32nd anniversary of the founding of Socialist Action in Canada. Our annual International Education Conference will be held online about 5 weeks from now, on Saturday, June the 13th. We warmly welcome you to attend online. It will feature speakers from across Canada and across the USA. Please don't miss it. No, Trump won't be here. Sorry, we didn't invite him. Please don't miss it on June the 13th. And if you want to change the world, get directly involved in our party. We invite you to join Socialist Action. At this time, it is fitting that we remember those who helped to build the socialist and working class movement through a lifetime of dedication. We want to honor the lives of some outstanding individuals who passed away within the last year. Robert Bob McDermott, 1953, January 5th, 2026. Born in Ottawa, Bob joined the socialist movement as a young man. When the Revolutionary Workers' League was formed in 1977, he went to Edmonton and worked in a steel mill. He met his wife Angela at a fourth international event. They moved to her native Spain and had two sons, Victor and Alan. After 6 years, they moved back to Canada, lived in Toronto, and then in Kingston. Bob was a longtime member of Socialist Action, a stalwart supporter of solidarity with Cuba, and a great lover of Irish music and dance. Sadly, he was a heavy smoker, and following a long and painful ordeal, succumbed to lung cancer and ALS. Comrade Bob McDermott, presente. We also remember Assata Shakur, who died on September the 24th, 2025 at age 78. She was a Black liberation activist and former Black Panther who lived under political asylum in Cuba after her escape from prison on a false conviction. And also Michael Parenti, September the 30th, 1933 to January 24th, 26, was an American political scientist, academic historian, and cultural critic. He taught at universities and also ran for political office. Parenti was well known for his Marxist writing and lectures, and was intellectual of the American left. In his last years, Parenti spoke at forums hosted by Socialist Action USA. Tonight, we also honored a member of tens of thousands of victims of Zionist genocide in Gaza and the West Bank, Iran and Lebanon. And we honored the countless others who fell in struggle against imperialism and its client regime. Please join me in observing a moment of silence in honor of all the artists, working militants, and socialists who have left us in the past year. Remember also that April 28th, the day of mourning for those who died due to injury on the job. We remember the victims who suffered from a system that puts profit ahead of health and safety. So please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you, but let's stay standing because now we're going to sing the International, which I think is appropriate on May Day. Harry, you want to lead it?
Trevor's going to join in.
Okay.
So, comrades and friends, you'll see the words to the Internationale in English, Spanish, and French, and you're welcome to sing it in any language you wish. Arise, ye prisoners of starvation, arise, ye wretched of the earth, for justice thunders condemnation, a better world's in birth. No more traditions change shall bind us. Arise, ye slaves, no more enthrall. The earth shall rise on new foundations. We have been not, we shall be all. 'Tis the final conflict. Let them stand in their place. The international working class shall be the human race. 'Tis the final conflict. Let each stand in their place. The international working class shall be the human race.
Great voice, Barry.
Nice work.
Voice of an angel.
Sisters and brothers, comrades and friends, once again, welcome to the annual Toronto Socialist Action May Day. For 40 years, we have sustained the fabulous celebration. I extend warm greetings to our friend across Canada, the United States, Mexico, Europe, and beyond, who will see this video recording of this event on the SA YouTube channel. With special thanks to Carrie V, who is filming it, and also to our political producer, I'm just saying, the International Federal Secretary Barry Wasler. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. J.P. Hornick, them, is president of OPSEU, Ontario Public Service Union. Representing more than 90,000 public sector workers across Ontario. J.P. led the 5-week 2017 college faculty strike, winning both academic freedom for all faculty and gains for precarious. Demand the employers said they never get. In 2022, J.P. led OPSEU education workers on an illegal strike. You sure you're not supposed to work it? Led OPSEU education workers on an illegal strike in support of the Ontario School Board workers. The historic battle against the Ford government's attempt to strip their rights to strike through resumptive strike use of the notwithstanding clause. As coordinator of the School of Labor at George Brown College, and longtime organizer within social justice movements, and after decades of rank-and-file work, JP had a deep commitment to the empowerment of everyday working people through coalition building and class-based solidarity. Since being elected president in 2022, they have begun transforming OPSEU into an organizing union, building workers' power through education, collective action, and deep relations with the broad labor movement. So congratulations, JP, and welcome.
Hey everybody, hey comrades, how are you doing?
Good.
This is like such a nice space to be in. I have to say, I'm not often in spaces where I can just be myself and my true self. And I think that's true for a lot of us in the world that we're living in right now. You know, when we're around comrades, when we're around the folks that actually get that we are in the middle of a class war that has been unceasing, but has escalated in the past few years in ways that I don't think any of us anticipated reigniting in quite the way that it has, right? We're looking at a time, and I'm just going to say it's not all, I get accused a lot of being gloom and doom, right? And I'm actually a fucking ray of sunshine. and I'll say this, yesterday on May Day, 2 years of culmination of work that we've been doing in OPSEU SEFPO, where we brought together 8 sectors. This is some of our lowest paid workers across social and developmental services, mental health, youth addictions. These are primarily women, primarily racialized women, primarily folks who are like precarious as hell and on the edge of like, anyway, so for 2 years, we've been building them to a point where they would actually bargain common demands, because all of these workers have one thing in common. They had their wages stolen by Doug Ford under Bill 124, and they were never compensated for it.
Shame.
Yeah, so this is a total of, it'll eventually be about 17,000 workers. But yesterday, on May Day, we had 27 bargaining units representing 4,000 workers across this province all file no board reports and commit to striking for better funding for social and developmental services and a return of the wages that they had stolen under Bill 124.
Solidarity.
Solidarity indeed. This is unheard of in public service sectors, and it is exactly what we need to be doing right now in these moments. I think I was asked to talk tonight just about the importance of the workers' movement, and it's weird for me to be a union leader, I'm not going to lie, because unions and the socialist movement don't always go hand in hand, right, to say the least. But I also think that we have a role to play in building a workers' movement, in connecting with community, in using the resources that we have in order to actually fund and support a true workers' revolutionary movement. Woo! Right? I know that I'm not the only union leader in Canada that believes that the true goal of what we need to do is to overthrow capitalism. And I also know that I'm not the only worker leader in Canada who believes that we are on the cusp of a general strike. Woo! And I think, actually I know, or I hope, in my heart of hearts, that strike is going to be led by workers, and every single union leader is going to be running to catch up. Yeah. Because quite frankly, the anger that people feel right now, the inability to put food on the table, to pay our rent, to make sure that this is going to require not structured leadership, but the intentional building of communities of care and networks of meaningful connection to one another. And that's what we do in this movement, in the real workers' movement, that's outside of unions, that's on the ground, that's in communities. The most exciting thing that I think I've seen in the past little while has been the launch of the York South-Weston Tenants Union as a provincial movement, rather than one that is limited to a single couple of apartment choice. So I'll say to this, friends, comrades, that my presence here tonight isn't just a kind of like, hey, thanks, and I really appreciate the invite. It is a commitment to the radical politics that we need to establish. And the challenge that I'm going to leave for us all is that the folks that have been sucked into that notion of what Trump is selling, what Ford is selling, although, my God, I'm going to measure everything in jets from now on, right? Like, how much does it take to fund social services and the wages that were stolen? About 3 jets, right? How much does it take on the go forward? 2 jets and a wing, maybe, right? It doesn't even need landing gear. But what I'll say is that what we're building right now in these types of spaces, we need to make sure that we don't get distracted by the inner fighting we do with one another about, like, what is the perfect form of the next tactic we need to take on? What is the appropriate strategy? We all know we need to overthrow capitalism. We just need to fucking run at it, right? I came out of the AIDS movement. We knew that people were dying, that this was existential. You don't wait for everybody to be, like, ideal. You don't wait for everybody to be a perfect activist. We need to go out and have conversations with the working people who aren't with us tonight until this isn't in the back room of the Free Times Cafe, but that this is filling every square across Toronto, because we know that the one thing we have in common is they don't give a shit whether we live or die, right? And that the only thing we have to beat them is solidarity. So I'll leave you with that. I challenge you, go out and find 3 people that you hate and peel them back into the movement. Because there's one class and it's the working class.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker, and please forgive me with your name, comrade. It's Ehsan Ashrafipour. I'm trying. Is an Iranian Canadian writer, speaker, and activist. As a member of the Iranian Canadian Congress, he opposes war, foreign intervention, imperialism, and colonial domination in the Middle East, while advocating equal rights and political respect for Iranians and all Middle Eastern peoples. His perspective is grounded in a deep love for Iran and in the conviction that liberty and democratic progress must come through the agency of the people of Iran themselves. So please, welcome, Comrade Ehsan.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for inviting me. So my English is not as good as yours, so I have to have my note here just in case I lose my words. So tonight, as we gather to celebrate International Workers' Day, we do so under the shadow of escalating imperialist aggressions that threatens not just the sovereignty of nations, but the very survival of working people across West Asia and beyond. The US-Israeli war machine is once again mobilizing, this time against Iran. Under the familiar false pretenses of bringing freedom and democracy to a region that has only known bombs, sanctions, and subversion at their hands. Western intervention in West Asia has never been about liberation. It has been about control of resources, control of markets, and control of geopolitical power. The current hostility toward Iran stems not from Iran's alleged threats, but from its audacity to escape American domination that began with that 1953 CIA-backed overthrow of its democratically elected government. Iran's crime, its refusal to remain a client state, is the same crime that has led to the destruction of Iraq, Libya, Syria, and other nations on Israel's notorious clean break hit list drafted in 1996. We reject the myth that Western intervention in West Asia is in the interest of the workers and families who live there and who are now making sacrifices with their lives to defend their sovereignty from the joint US-Israeli aggression. This isn't a speculation, this is the lived reality of millions who have seen their countries destroyed, their loved ones killed, and their futures stolen in the name of democracy. What democracy arrives in the form of guided missiles. We believe in the Iranian people's right to self-determination and civic freedoms, which can only achieve through organic grassroots movements, not from bombs rained down from the sky. The Iranian people have not invaded another country in over 200 years, more than 250 years. They are not the aggressors here. They have sought diplomacy and economic normalization for years, only to be met with crippling sanctions, sabotage, and now the threat of annihilation. Their struggle for dignity against both Western imperialism and their own government's restrictions is one that belongs to them alone, not to be hijacked by foreign powers seeking regime change. Make no mistake, this war, if it comes fully to pass, will not be contained. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz would trigger an economic catastrophe that would devastate working people here in Canada, across the global north, and throughout the world. Gasoline and food prices would skyrocket. Jobs would disappear, and the instability could easily spiral into a global conflict that fallout shelters couldn't save us from. This is not an exaggeration. It's the near-term forecast from economists who understand that destroying 25% of the world's oil supply has consequences for everyone. And for what? To satisfy the delusional ideologies of leaders in Washington and Tel Aviv who see themselves as divinely appointed to redraw the maps of the Middle East, to prop up an Israeli government that has abandoned any pretense of seeking peace, and instead embraces a doctrine of permanent preemptive war, to maintain U.S. global hegemony in a world that has grown tired of its endless bullying. On this May Day, a day born from the struggle of workers demanding their rights, we must stand in unwavering solidarity with the working people of Iran, Palestine, Lebanon, Cuba, and all nations facing imperialist aggression. Ours is not the nationalism of flags and borders, but internationalism that recognizes the working class worldwide shares common enemies. The war profiteers, the oil banners, the military-industrial complex, and the politicians who serve them instead of us. Our opposition to this war is rooted in our understanding that the resources being squandered on bombs, drones, and warships could instead be used to build hospitals, schools, housing, and a green energy infrastructure that could actually address the environmental disasters we all face. The trillions spent on this and destruction could lift billions out of poverty and provide the dignified life that all working people deserve. So to our comrades tonight, I say, let us recommit ourselves to building a powerful anti-imperialist movement that makes the cost of war politically unbearable for our leaders. Let us organize, educate, and mobilize in our unions, our communities, our schools, and our streets. Let us demand let us demand an immediate end to sanctions on Iran and Cuba, an end to the genocide in Palestine and Lebanon, an end to entire system of imperialist domination that breeds war and steals from the working class. The struggle may be long, but our cause is just. Another world is possible, one where nations determine their own destiny, where resources are shared for human need, not private profit, and where workers everywhere can live in peace and dignity. That is the world we fight for. We should acknowledge that the future of every nation belongs to its workers, its families, its youth, and its people. Not to Washington, not to Tel Aviv, not to NATO, not to billionaires, not to arm dealers, and not to any empire. The Iranian people do not need bombs to become free. They don't need sanctions to become democratic. They need peace. They need sovereignty. They need dignity. They need the space to struggle, organize, debate, reform, and build their own future. That is the only honest anti-war position. That is the only internationalist position. Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody standing in the back, there's seats up here at the front. Okay, so before we move to our next speaker, I'm going to read greetings from Jeff Mackler, who's the Federal Secretary of Socialist Action USA. We extend our deepest solidarity to you as you celebrate this year's May Day, the International Working Class Holiday, at a time when the U.S. imperialist beast moves again and again and again to extract yet another pound of flesh to resolve its inherent and deepening crisis. Capitalism has no answers other than endless wars against working class people at home and abroad, inseparable from environmental destruction, racism, sexism, and LGBTQ+ discrimination. These ills are inherent in the nature of the predatory system. Today's U.S. imperialist horrors include more saturation bombing of the Iranian people, not unlike the ongoing bipartisan genocide of the Palestinian masses. The abduction of Venezuela's president and his wife achieved very high-tech murder of 100+ Venezuelans and Cuban defenders. More atrocities to come, and soon. There is no lesser evil in capitalist politics. Trump's seemingly irrational Canada is to be a 51st state is little more than a moron's rant, freed from the constraints of civilized dialogue. The beast, with 1,100 military bases and 110 countries, openly declares that it exists primarily to advance the interests of a U.S. ruling class whose share of the world's trade and wealth, in the face of intensifying competition, has been cut in half over the past decade. War on every front is its solution. It is coupled with intellectual... No, sorry, I missed a page here. Coupled by the massive socialist spending cuts, increasing political repression, mass deportation, and ICE rampages, Socialist Action USA and Socialist Action Canada exist to abolish this sick and twisted state of affairs. We aim to build deeply rooted mass revolutionary socialist parties and militant social movements led by the working class and its allies among all the oppressed. We are proud to be partners with Socialist Action Canada in this all-important endeavor, there is no greater task. In solidarity and comradely yours, Jeff Mackler, Socialist Action National Secretary. Okay, so we're going to move to our next speaker, who was supposed to be Victor Manuel Garcia Sanchez, who's the Consul General of Cuba in Toronto, but he got tied up in other affairs tonight, and he couldn't. Cuba's great, but he couldn't be in two places at once. So instead, he has sent a representative from Cuba, who we are very proud to have with us here, and she is Tanya Valenzuela, who's the first consul of Cuba here in Toronto. So welcome, comrade.
Hello everyone, my name is Tanya Valenzuela, I'm Consul of Cuba. Unfortunately, the Consul General couldn't come here because, like she explained, she must to be in another event, so today will be me. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure for me to be here with all of you. And with your permission, I'm going to read my words because I'm not English native, so I think we better. I feel more comfortable if I read my words. So yesterday, Army General Raúl Castro Ruz, leader of the Cuban Revolution, and Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, first secretary of the Central Committee of Communist Party of Cuba and president of the Republic of Cuba, presided the May 1st parade, even in the Cuban capital. The celebration of International Worker Days in Havana, in Cuba, thousands of workers mobilized to take part in the massive rally, with more than 500,000 people participating in Havana. Cuban and Palestinian flags flew side by side in a parade that also served as a message of solidarity and a call for peace. The march, which went beyond mere commemoration, became a political and social reaffirmation in defense of our revolution. This parade was the perfect finale after a week in which we, Cubans, reaffirmed our commitment to the homeland with our signature. We stand firm to show Trump and the United States that our revolutionary principles are unshakable and that we, Cubans, stand with the leadership of the party and the revolution. Whenever the homeland calls, we will be here. More than 6 million of Cubans signed the initiative My Signature for the Homeland, petition in defense of national sovereignty and against the U.S. blockade and war. The initiative, known as My Signature for the Homeland, represented an exercise of popular sovereignty in the face of escalating aggression against the nation. It was spearheaded by civil society organizations in response to the economic, commercial, and financial blockade and the hybrid war against Cuba. The announcement of the conclusion of the process was made on May 1st during the International Workers' Day ceremony in Cuba, where President Díaz-Canel received the book containing the 6,230,973 signatures of workers, farmers, students, intellectuals, artists, athletes, and all Cubans against the genocidal blockade and the crude imperial threat. As is well known, the U.S. government has intensified the embargo against Cuba this year. The Trump administration has intensified the energy blockade against Cuba since January 2026, implementing severe measures to prohibit the supply of oil to the island. These actions included sanctions against suppliers countries and companies, tariff, and the threat to freeze the assets of those who trade with key sectors of Cuba's energy, defense, and financial industries. In addition, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Friday, May 1st, to impose new illegal coercive measures against Cuba. These unilateral and abusive measures are intended to increase pressure on the island in the midst of the latest intensification of the economic, commercial, and financial blockade, and the energy blockade enacted in late January.
The sanctions specifically target foreign banks that cooperate with Cuban government and impose further immigration restrictions. According to the executive order, the U.S. will freeze the access of, among others, those who operate or have operated in Cuba's energy, mining, defense, or security sectors, or who have provided material, financial, or technological support to the Cuban government or other sanctioned individuals. It also states that any person, company, or financial organization that operates or does business with sanctioned Cuban entities will have their assets in the United States completely frozen. Trump's new illegal measures seek to economically strangle our people and destroy the Cuban Revolution. However, that will not happen. Our people are ready to fight for our sovereignty and independence. We are ready to continue collecting millions of signatures and organizing massive marches like the one on May 1st to show the world that the Cuban people defend the revolution and will never surrender.
Yay!
Long live the Cuban Revolution. Viva la Revolución Cubana.
Thank you, comrade. Okay, so we're going to continue and still remain in Cuba. Our next speaker is Julio Fonseca. Is the co-chair of the Canadian Network on Cuba and president of the Association of Cubans in Toronto. He is a professor in the Department of Languages, Linguistics, and Literature at York University. He is an active liaison between the Latin American community and York University. So welcome, Julio.
Good evening, sisters and brothers. Thank you to the organizers for inviting us to the 40th Annual Socialist May Day celebration. It is a great pleasure for me to bring a message of solidarity and love on behalf of the Canadian Network on Cuba and the Association of Cubans resident in Toronto, Juan Gualberto Gomez, to this celebration. I take the occasion to remind you that Cuba continues to suffer under the attack of the most powerful country in the world. It is a siege exerted on the US or by the US on Cuba for more than 65 years. It is collective punishment, which is against international law. On Friday, the United States of America tightened the choke on the heroic people of Cuba with an additional presidential order that accuses Cuba to be an existential threat to the US and declared that punitive measures will be applied to any US or foreign persons who aid Cuba resist the aggression of that country. It is not coincidental that the new attack on the most elemental human right of the Cuban people, the right to exist, was announced on Labor Day, after millions of Cubans marched all over the island to demand the end of the economic war on their families and to defend the Cuban Revolution. And also, shortly after, more than 6 million Cubans expressed their support for their government in a movement called Mi Firma por Cuba, or por la Patria, which in English is my signature for the homeland. It is a desperate move of the US to strengthen the genocide against the Cuban population, trying to starve it into submission so that they renounce their sovereignty, independence, and dignity. However, any attempt to take Cuba easily, as the US president puts it in his delirium, will be crushed by the resistance of the Cuban people.
Yay!
Cuba will prevail despite the aggression. Once more, we ask for your support defending the right of Cuba to self-determination and to build the socio-economic system that it chooses. Cubans have the right to live in peace and dignity. When we defend Cuba today, We're not only defending Cuba, but also we are defending the world against imperialism and fascism. Cuba is probably one of the last bastions of sovereignty and dignity still standing. We cannot allow Cuba to fail. Proletariat of the world, unite against injustice. Abajo el bloqueo, viva Cuba libre.
Okay, before I go to the next speaker, I want to remind everybody, as usual, we always have a very great raffle every year people look forward to. Because why? One of the prizes is a bottle of Cuban rum. Okay, so there's many other prizes. The tickets are what are the prizes? What are the tickets? How much are they? $2 each, that's it. $2 each are 3 for $5. And we've got a woman's handbag from Nicaragua. We've got a scarf of some kind from Cuba. We have a stool, would you believe? A wooden carved stool is from Cuba. We have a handbag that's from Nepal, I think, and several other things. So we got a couple of handbags. One is from Honduras, maybe. There you go. Tickets will be going around soon. That's some of the other things, yes. So anyway, it's $2 each. Yeah, Thomas, $2 each or 3 for $5. Okay. All right. Our next speaker is Sister Angela Bischoff. She is the director of the Ontario Clean Air Alliance, leading the charge for 100% renewable, non-nuclear energy Ontario. With over 30 years in the environmental movement across 4 Canadian cities, she is also a yoga teacher, avid cyclist, and diva. Devoted caregiver. So, please meet Angela.
Thanks for the invitation. Thank you, Socialist Action, and happy May Day.
Yeah.
So I figured this is a really smart crowd, and there's no reason for me to do my regular rant. Instead, I'm going to quiz you, because I know that you have a really good handle on the issues I'm going to talk about. A lot of you have heard me speak before. So I'm going to give you a quiz, and I expect you to just yell out your answers, okay? And I'll give you some background to every question. So many of you who are from Ontario would remember that prior to Doug Ford being elected, we had the Liberal government for how many years? More than 15 years. Okay, so I'm an environmental activist, and I work on the electricity file. And the Wynne and McGuinty government did some really good things on my file, because we were advocating for them and they were doing it. And what they did is, the first most important thing they did, which was our campaign, this is civil society advocated, started in 1997, advocated for a phase out of coal. And it took 17 years, the McGuinty and Wynne government did it. They made it happen. Ontario was the first jurisdiction in the world to phase out coal for environmental and health reasons, and it was considered the largest climate achievement in North America. We were the first jurisdiction in the world, and then the rest of the world started following our lead. So that was a very good thing. At the same time, how they phased out the coal was they ramped up wind and solar, they invested in conservation and efficiency, they made a deal with Quebec to exchange peak power, and they reduced electricity demand by 10% over 10 years, while simultaneously the GDP rose 10%. and the population rose 10%. So they did some really good things on the electricity file. So the first question I have for you, which province in Canada has the most wind and solar power today? Alberta? BC? PEI?
Quebec.
Quebec? Ontario. Ontario, the Liberal and McGuinty governments, they ramped up so quickly. We still to this day have the most wind and solar. Of course, when Doug Ford was elected, the first thing he did was cancel 758 renewable energy projects, including 2 wind farms that were already built. He ripped out turbines, which cost taxpayers $200 million to pay out those companies. They canceled the conservation budget by 40%. They canceled the deal with Quebec for interprovincial exchange, and they started building nuclear and gas plants. It tells you who they represent. So, my next question. So the whole world is grappling with climate change. We're trying to reduce our fossil fuel use, right? We signed the Paris Accord in 2015. Countries are committed to phasing out fossil fuels. Ontario had phased out coal. The other thing the Wynne government did was they also reduced gas, electrical power, to 4%. So when Doug Ford was elected, only 4% of our electricity grid was powered by fossil gas. No coal, no oil, fossil gas. 4%. What is it today? 20. 10. Who said 20? That was so good. It's 19 point something. Nice. And what? Well, okay, one more for you. What will it be in the next 4 years? Like by 2030, what's it projected to be? According to government. Up a little bit too high, 50, a quarter of our power, 25% of our power will come from gas in 2030. So while the whole world is phasing out fossil fuels, or at least committed to, Doug Ford has ramped it up from 4% to 20% today, 25% by 2030. So we're going the opposite direction. I mean, he also eliminated our climate plan, and he did a whole bunch of other things, including, so on the climate front, he's a total climate villain. Okay.
He suffers from jet lag.
That's right. Okay. Who promised in 2018 in the 28 election over and over and over to lower electricity bills?
Doug.
Doug the thug. He promised to lower electricity bills. Didn't he even say by 12%? He even said he's going to lower electricity bills by 12%. Okay. What have electricity rates, actual electricity rates, not what you pay, but the actual cost of electricity, what have they risen? What percentage have they risen since Doug Ford was elected in 2018? Any guesses? 12. Whatever. 7. The actual number is, and this just blows my mind, the average time of use electricity rates have risen 57% since 2018. But guess what? You don't know it, because all taxpayers subsidize your electricity rates, and that's done through the Ontario electricity rebate. And do you not have that on your bill? You get an OER, an Ontario electricity rebate, every month on your bill. And what percentage of your electricity bill is covered by the Ontario electricity rebate? A fraction. A quarter. So a quarter of your electricity bill is covered by all taxpayers. That's called the Ontario Electricity Rebate. That is how many $1 billion a year goes into the Ontario Electricity Rebate. $8.5 billion out of the tax base to subsidize our electricity rates so that people don't know how high electricity actually costs. And they've applied for a 70% increase in the OPG has applied for a 77% increase in the rate it is paid for power, OPG's power. And what is that to pay for? 77% rate increase. Nuclear projects. So the whole tax base is subsidizing OPG to build nuclear projects. And $8.5 billion is 2/3 of the provincial deficit. So the provincial deficit is $13.5 billion a year. We are all indebted $13.5 billion a year, 8.5, which goes to subsidize electricity rates to artificially lower them so that OPG can build nuclear plants. And their nuclear projects, guess how much they are committing Ontario taxpayers to pay moving forward for new, I'm just talking new nuclear projects, in billions. Take a guess. $400 billion on new nuclear projects. We already have 18 reactors. They want to double the fleet. They want to rebuild all our existing nuclear reactors and build 3 new stations, including the world's largest nuclear station at Port Hope. And we all get to pay for that, and we just are subsidizing the electricity rates. And while they build all those nuclear plants, they are ramping up gas. That's why they're ramping up gas, because they're rebuilding all these nuclear stations. They're taking reactors offline, and to provide the power, they're building more gas plants, ramping up the Portland's gas plant on Toronto's waterfront, just ramping it up. It was supposed to be a peaker plant. It's now running 21 hours a day in the midst of a huge housing development. So Doug Ford represents the nuclear and gas interests. That's what it comes down to. And not the renewables industry. What's the competition to nuclear and gas-fired electricity?
Wind and solar.
Wind, solar, that's 2.
Thermal.
Geothermal, conservation, and exchange with our partners, because both Quebec and Manitoba are virtually 100% powered by water power. And they're building more wind power so that they can share power with their neighbors. Doug Ford is instead, and Carney, are building SMRs, United States SMRs. We're building them.
30 seconds.
Oh, okay. So wind and solar, how many times cheaper are they? Wind and solar, conservation, and water power from Quebec, like shared east-west grid. How many times cheaper are they than Doug Ford's nuclear plants? 4 times cheaper. So right now with the war in Iran, the world is forced to move to a renewable future. Most of the world do not produce fossil fuels like Canada and the United States. They are dependent on imports, and the Strait of Hormuz has reminded them that they better get onto a renewable future. China is providing them with low-cost renewables, and Canada is building pipelines, LNG, and nuclear reactors. Thanks, Carney and Doug Ford.
Thanks for nothing.
Thanks for nothing. But the good news is that the world is going renewable. That's the good news, and we can all celebrate that solidarity with all the world. Thank you.
Okay. So our next speaker is Julius Arscott. He's a leading member of Socialist Action and this is officially first person at this event. 3 times he was elected to the executive board of the Ontario Public Service Employees Union. He was the Workers' Action Movement candidate for top positions in the Canadian Labour Congress and the Ontario Federation of Labour. Julius continues as president of OPSEU Local 532, based in the Ministry of the Environment. He is a leading proponent of Palestinian rights and for class struggle unionism. Welcome, Julius.
Hey. Happy May Day, everyone. Well, okay. All right. So, good evening, everyone, comrades, siblings, and friends. International Workers' Day, unlike Labor Day in September, is the occasion to celebrate workers' solidarity, to defend our past gains, and to renew the struggle for socialism. May Day is rooted in the quest for a world without exploitation and oppression. Socialist action has been at the forefront of these actions for decades. May Day isn't a bank holiday. It was born out of the blood and strikes of Chicago in 1886. The 8-hour day movement, so that's 8 hours for work, 8 hours to rest, and 8 hours for what we will. Tonight, let's consider where we are, where we need to go, and how we will get there together. Firstly, let's name the reality. Canada is at a crossroads. Rising costs, stagnant wages, record debt, housing and food costs are increasingly out of touch. Healthcare and transit are being defunded. Then privateers are stepping in to fill the gap at a price. Liberals and conservatives alike seize powers to crush Indigenous and labor rights, to suppress democratic dissent. The billionaire class build their wealth on stolen land and via the genocide of Indigenous people. They still shape society in their self-interest. Men in corporate boardrooms dictate national policy. Ordinary people are told to tighten their belts while the rich loosen theirs over glasses of champagne. Meanwhile, right-wing populists in government embolden neo-Nazis and alt-right scum. Attacks on women's reproductive rights, on trans people, are vicious and coordinated. The answer to this challenge is not begging the state to ban fascists. The state protects them. Only direct mass action, unionists, leftists, and allies together will enforce the policy of no platform for fascists and racists. And the planet? Capitalist profit trumps survival. Green capitalism, carbon credits, and empty pledges has failed. Wildfires destroy towns, public health collapses, and everyone is told that Russia and China are the real threats. What a joke. Meanwhile, public funds are shifted from social programs to military expansion. Ottawa is cutting 100,000 federal public service jobs. The system is broken by design. Now we look at the parties of the boss's parliament. The Carney Liberals have shifted hard to the right. Carney opposes Trump on trade. Fine. But on foreign policy, he backs, openly or quietly, the U.S. proxy war in Ukraine, U.S. attacks on Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, and the Zionist genocide against Palestinians. That opens a door for the NDP. But in April 2025, the NDP was almost wiped out. 7 seats, now only 5. In the leadership race, bureaucrats blocked 2 socialist candidates. All 5 of the vetted candidates think capitalism can be fixed. Put higher taxes on billionaires, but keep billionaires in charge. Long ago, the NDP abandoned a workers' agenda. Union ties to the party have withered. Many unions now play pragmatic, sometimes backing liberals to stop conservatives. Reward your friends, punish your enemies, regardless of their class. That's American-style Gomperism. It crosses the class line, like violating a picket line. It's a case of betrayal of the working class. Clearly, the reformist road is dead. and independent working class politics are needed. That's because capitalism, thanks Barry, that's because capitalism can't be fixed. In mid-2025, the Socialist Caucus of the NDP launched a campaign. Thousands joined across the country. Yves Engler ran for leader, but he was excluded by an unelected vetting committee, not because of his character, but because the controllers of the NDP hate socialism. Look around. Gaza genocide, attacks on Lebanon, Yemen, Iran, and Sudan. Ottawa does nothing. Indigenous people are still under colonial rule. Housing, healthcare, inflation, attacks on migrants, trans people, workers, all past gains made by labor are hanging by a thread. None of the big parties will solve this crisis. For decades, they deregulated. They undertaxed corporations, catered to climate criminals and war profiteers. They supported genocide, occupation, colonialism, and racism. The cause is not just bad management, it's capitalism, a system geared to profit and not people. Social democracy's promise to fix capitalism is a mountainous fraud. The contradictions of the private profit system are irreconcilable to nature and humanity. A new revolutionary movement is needed and is urgent. That's why the booklet, Capitalism Can't Be Fixed, there's some out front. I don't think we have any in here right now. We can check in the books table in the back, is attracting a lot of interest. It's a program for a new generation, a generation that wants system change. Reformism and reform won't save the world, but socialism will. So what does the Capitalism Can't Be Fixed campaign actually stand for? We're committed to socialism. Public ownership of the commanding heights of the economy under workers and indigenous control. Anti-imperialism, internationalism is key because socialism in one country is not sustainable. We support the Capitalism Can't Be Fixed policy book and keep it open to new ideas. So it's a living document. We will engage with genuine anti-capitalists, even those still inside the NDP. No purism, but no illusions either. At the May 24 conference in Toronto, which is coming up, we plan to elect a steering committee with deep regional and sectoral representation. The new socialist movement will advance campaigns, communications, political education, and raise the funds to do it. We will draft a charter to set forth the mission, members' rights, democratic decision-making, local chapters, and regular conventions. Marx said, "Theory without practice is sterile. Practice without theory is blind." So we commit to host regular educational sessions, debates, and joint action with allies. Not just reading groups, not just going on marches, but both and much more. Plus a founding convention later this year. This is a new socialist movement, not a sect, but a broad force for revolutionary change. That's my cue to take a little break here. Woo! It's important. It's important to be clear about false friends. Some on the left say BRICS is a reliable counterforce to US imperialism. They note that BRICS now has a larger share of global GDP than the G7. But consider the facts. On the Gaza genocide, BRICS voiced objections but took no direct action. They continued economic ties with Israel. No material aid went to Palestinians.
Shame.
Shame. On Venezuela, objections but no action.
Shame.
On Iran, a BRICS member attacked by US Israel, more words, but no material support.
Shame.
Cuba is abandoned by states that formerly benefited from Cuban internationalism, like much of the Caribbean. Benoit Sharma notes Moscow and Beijing abandoned Tehran at the UN. Their own interests came first. I'm not going to spell this or pronounce this well. Jose Veloz Serrat calls it hypocritical multilateralism. BRICS group doesn't work to transform the capitalist world order. It just wants to find a more comfortable place within it. Multipolarity is not anti-imperialism. Imperialism and sub-imperial powers will conspire to exploit workers, women, and nature. There can be no reliance on rival capitalist blocs. Only international working class mass action will save us from the barbarity of war and imperialism. Finally, the defense of Palestine is the defense of free speech. On March 17th, Israel ended the partial ceasefire and resumed bombing Gaza. Food, water, medicines are blocked. Zionist aggression extends to Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. U.S. attacks on Yemen continue. In Canada, police and governments conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism to silence opposition on campuses, on picket lines, and elsewhere. And those of us in the labor movement have experienced plenty of it. Here's an example. Socialist Action Federal Secretary Barry Weisletter was accosted by a far-right media provocateur on April 4th. Barry was then arrested and charged by police on the liar's complaint. Joined the campaign to drop the false charges of the assault and to void the release conditions that stopped Barry from attending protest-related activities on private property. I think that was the whole point of that. To stop Barry. An injury to one is an injury to all. Abolish the bubble zones that ban protests within 50 meters of certain institutions. Reject the two-state solution that seeks to preserve a genocidal, colonial, apartheid state armed with nuclear weapons. The Palestinian people deserve freedom. From the river to the sea, not a set of disconnected, impoverished, ever-shrinking Bantustans. We demand ceasefire now, boycott, divestment, sanctions against the Zionist state, for the right of return of all refugees, for a democratic, secular Palestine. Proletarian internationalism is not optional. International Workers' Day celebrates the struggle for workers' power and socialism globally. We must organize, resist, and educate. The role of a revolutionary party is to stir things up and to engage members and supporters. In the face of trade wars, rising authoritarianism, genocide, and climate catastrophe, the need for a revolutionary party has never been greater. At the center of our strategy here in Socialist Action, Ligue pour l'Action Socialiste, is mass action, working class political independence from capital and the state, and the construction of a Leninist party. If you like what you hear tonight, join us. Another world is necessary, possible, and worth fighting for. Have a happy Red May Day weekend. Solidarity forever.
Thank you, comrade. Okay, our next speaker is Alma Weinstein of the Riel Bolivarian Circle. Defenders of sovereign Venezuela is here to demand freedom for Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, kidnapped by the USA and held in a Brooklyn jail. Trump should be jailed for gross interference. End the U.S. sanctions and control now. So welcome, Comrade Alma.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Alma Weinstein, and I am member of
Can't hear you.
My name is Alma Weinstein, and I am member of Bolivarian Circle Louis Riel, Toronto. We, the Louis Riel Bolivarian Circle, who here in Canada defend the revolutionary people of Venezuela, salute the working class of Canada and the world on their day, urging that we remain united in our struggle for justice, peace, and life free from the clouds of imperialism. On January 3, 2026, Venezuela suffered a brutal illegal attack by the United States, carried out with the most advanced modern weaponry. The bombs murdered 120 people and violating fundamental international laws, kidnapped the constitutional and worker President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Congresswoman Celia Flores. It was a day of infamy, a bloodthirsty, greedy, and immoral nuclear-powered nation attacked an unsuspecting, less powerful country to possess its oil and mineral riches. This empire has cast off its many masks and now openly attacks with no excuses to regain political and economic power and possess the natural resources it craves. For 27 years, the United States has waged a hybrid war against Venezuela and its Bolivarian revolution.
Shame.
Now it has used its sheer naked military power to try and break it. They will not succeed because the Bolivarian revolution, after 27 years, is on the very fabric of Venezuela political culture and of its collective psyche. For now, while the lives of President Maduro and his wife are on the line, the brave interim President Delcy Rodriguez is biding her time and preparing. Venezuela has not given up. The people are still on the street demanding its rights and the return of its president. So today, more than ever, the working class of Canada and the world should stick for Venezuela's sovereignty. We should demand that Ottawa defend the inalienable rights of Venezuela and demand the immediate release of its Presidente and First Lady. It's the time for international solidarity and resolve in face of this evil, bloodthirsty empire. We will overcome. Venceremos. Viva Bolívar, viva Chávez, viva Maduro, viva Jorge Rodríguez y viva Delcy Rodríguez.
Viva.
Thank you.
Okay. So our next speaker is Learie Charles, who is the president of the Scarborough local of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. He and his co-workers across the country are in the forefront of the fight to defend public services and to uphold the right to strike. Learie says no to the boss's latest offer, which would eliminate thousands of jobs and end mail delivery to the millions. As a retired postal worker of the Toronto local, brother, my vote is no as well. So please welcome Brother Charles.
Good evening, comrades. On International Labor Day, the day of the working people all over, I would like to bring you greetings on behalf of postal workers across the country, because they have been in various ways celebrating this day. We do not have the traditional celebrations on a big scale, but this is large enough for us to start us and for it to grow. The importance of it, International Working, used to call it Working Men's Day, but International Working Class Day, has been well expressed here this evening by all the speakers. I especially point out the speakers from Cuba, from Venezuela, and those who come from so many other countries. Postal workers have maintained close contacts with all the countries where revolutionary work is taking place. The National Office of the Union actually sends activists to these countries so that we can learn from their struggles. We send activists to Cuba on a regular basis. We send activists to Venezuela. We send activists to Palestine. I myself visited Palestine on the invitation of the Palestinian postal workers, and we got to learn what their struggle is all about, what racism they experience, and to see that it is very much like what was taking place in South Africa, where it is apartheid. You get to see it firsthand. You get to see that on this side of the road, you can only have Israelis walking, and on the other side of the road, you can only have Palestinians walking. And of course, one road is almost a dirt road, and the other road is a well-paved highway. I want to thank you in particular on International Working Class Day for the work which you have done in terms of supporting the struggle of the postal workers over the last, you can say, 30 months or so. We have carried out quite a fierce struggle in order to get a contract. And nothing has ever been won easily by the postal workers. And we have arrived at a stage where a tentative collective agreement has been given to us by the national leadership in Ottawa, or sections of that national leadership. And they're asking us to vote in favor of this contract.
Shame.
August 1st last year, we rejected most of the demands which are in the present contract that they're offering. We actually rejected it by over 70% of the postal workers. We are now, however, being asked to vote in favor now of those same measures which we rejected. This is, of course, the source of leaders like myself and others in the union telling its membership that they should vote against this contract, especially where it impacts the urban postal workers, because it is an incomplete contract. It is a disservice to the struggle which the workers have carried out for the last 30 months in order to get a more up-to-date contract, one which presents them with something by way of increased wages. They have now come up with an innovation in terms of wages, which is saying to postal workers that in order to get an increase in pay for 2026, 27, or 28, a decent increase in pay, you must have an international disaster, and the Canadian economy must crash. It's the only basis upon which you can get what you may call a decent wage increase. And let me explain what I mean by saying this. They've come up with a system where you don't negotiate your wage increase. Instead, you depend on the cost of living. And the ingredients which go into the cost of living, of course, they're all put there by the ruling circles, so they can manipulate it accordingly. So for this year, 2026, the wage increase might be under 2%. And for the other years, we don't know what it will be. But if it is to get up to a height where it may be satisfactory, let's say 3% or more, you have to have a national disaster in the Canadian economy, where the cost of living for the entire working class goes through the roof. You cannot meet your bills, you cannot get your transportation, you could hardly pay for groceries, and the cost of living goes over 3%, then that will be given to postal workers. And I just give you one example of the methods which they have tried to introduce. It's the same thing whereby other things are happening in that contract which are no good. Right now, the bosses in Canada Post are simply coming to you, especially if you are a modified worker, and telling you, as you report for duty, go home, we have no work for you, and you're not paid for that day. I'm not saying this, I'm not making up anything, it's happening. I work out of a plant, I'm responsible for a plant in Scarborough, the most modern postal plant in the country, the largest in the country. It's called the Alma Jackson Processing Plant. Alma Jackson, whom most of you know, was the first black postal worker from just out here in Brunswick Avenue, right out here. That plant, this is where it is going on. Actually, when you come to work, you are an injured worker or you need modified duties, we have no work for you, go home. That's what is going on. And it has been increasing over the last while. The aim of the postal administration, as it is being said, is to eliminate up to 30,000 jobs. 30,000 jobs. Out of a workforce, a real workforce of either production, processing, and distribution workers of about 55,000. So it's a massive cuts which they're coming with for the postal workers. Saying that, I did bring a card, which can be, you can take a card and sign it to send to the parliamentarians, asking them to have a proper review of the post office. Because one of the major things which is being done right now is throughout the city, as going to get here, starting in Etobicoke, they'll be breaking up the distribution pattern where you go from door to distribute the mail. And when I say mail, stop thinking about letter mail. Think about parcels. Where they're telling you now that you have to deliver it to a box. I would not be coming to your home, I'm coming and putting it into a box. And you must then leave your home and go to that box to get your piece of whatever I bought for you. When this is done, they are claiming it will bring down the cost of delivery. And when the cost of delivery goes down, they are thinking Canada Post will become profitable. But why would I give you something to deliver for me to a box down the road, maybe once every 2 days or once every 3 days? Right now, I have the option of getting daily delivery from a postal worker. They're telling me, yes, they'll bring it once every couple of days for you instead. The competition for Canada Post, UPS, FedEx, Purolator, and all of them, they are bringing the parcel, however, to your door. You don't even know when they came. 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, they drop it off and you get your parcel as you open your door. So what is the sense that they're trying to tell the public that their schemes will improve the lives of the postal workers, will bring down cost, and will give you a postal service? In fact, what they're trying to do is to wreck the postal service, to hand it over to the big monopolies, like if you see on a Sunday afternoon and on a Saturday afternoon, all over. Purolator trucks are driving. 6 o'clock this evening, you can see them out there. FedEx trucks are driving, delivering the mail. You're not seeing any postal trucks on those days. So despite all that we have done in terms of making suggestions as to how postal delivery should be done, it could be done for 7 days a week without working overtime. 7 days a week, you can start workers at various first days. Some go from Sunday to Thursday, some go from Monday to Friday, and some go from Tuesday to Saturday. And you cover the entire week, no overtime cost. We have brought this to them if they want. We have also said to them, across the country, there are over maybe 8,000 post offices. Each one of them can become a bank or a branch of a bank, especially in those areas. Especially in those areas where the big banks have abandoned the people in the countryside. There is room for it. Banking now can be done over a phone. As a postal worker, I come to your home with what we call a personal terminal, and you want to do some banking, I can put you in contact with the postal bank, and you see about your business. I go about my business delivering mail, you are in contact, you do it over the phone, everything is done, you pay a fee to Canada Post, a small fee. Little by little it picks up. It's one of the greatest ways in which other countries have gone, and they're profitable, by way of bringing in income which will balance the imbalance in Canada, whereby the countryside is very difficult to serve. Meaning that, I don't want to go too much longer, meaning that what happens is this: if you live in the countryside, especially in the north, anything which you need for Christmas must be ordered by next month, by June. Whether it is cement or blocks or things for your groceries, it must be ordered, and you have delivery ready from Canada Post, organized in June this year for it to arrive for you in December. Otherwise, you don't have Christmas. So you're unable to have a good life in the north because the cost of things up there is so much, and Canada Post is the main transportation method which is going there. I tell you this because people don't see it. In the cities, the big cities across Canada, Canada Post is profitable. However, when you balance it across the responsibility in the countryside, many times it turns out into barely breaking even. But this is the cost of providing a public service, a service which assists in building and uniting the country, as Canada Post has done over the last 175 years. It's important to understand that. It's a service which is central to the building of Canada. However, Carney and they want to smash it. They want to hand it over to private industry and then say there's a disaster. So this is why we have said to our members that for the urban contract, they should vote no. A more controversial part of it, however, is we have also said to them that at this time, and you can judge the public, we are also saying to you that if strike, because they've been asked to vote on a strike also while they vote for their contract, we are saying to them you should also vote no for a strike. And I know this can cause controversy. And why we are saying this is important. When you are at this stage of this 30-month struggle, it's difficult to get workers to use the strike weapon effectively. Strike should assist in carrying forward your struggle, in helping you to overpush or push over the boss at a critical stage so that you can win what you need. The model and the mood which is there right now will not allow a strike of that kind to be successful. It is better, we says, as we are saying to our leaders in Ottawa, go back to the bargaining table and give us a better contract. We will look after the affairs of the company by staying on the job and delivering the people's mail, letting them be satisfied that they are getting their mail. However, you go back and do the negotiations to fix this contract. And that's where we are. For those workers who work in the countryside, we are saying to them, vote yes for your contract, because it's different with them. They actually are coming from a bad situation.
30 seconds.
Okay, and they're coming into a better situation. So we are asking you for support, just like you've given us support on so many other things. Stand with us. We do not know that we are going to win this struggle, but we have to carry this fight because of all the other things which are being done. So I thank you very much on this International Working Class Day for standing up for the working class and people of Canada, and for the support which you give to all the countries who are fighting imperialism. Thank you very much, brother.
Ahora vamos a un paréntesis y empezamos a repetir. nosotros agarramos, como Juan.
Okay. Yes, I know, Harry's reminding me of the tickets. So we have one more speaker, and then we're going to, I have a greeting to read out, and then we'll have a 5-minute break so Tom can do his job and sell tickets. And, okay, so one of our musicians, I think, is leaving, is getting too late. Sorry about that. Sorry.
That I had to leave early.
Sorry. All right. Thanks for coming out anyway. Okay, our next speaker is Dirka Prout. She's a self-described poly-engineer who has represented Canada's NDP 3 times in the electoral district of the London North Centre or in London Centre. She is a frequent contributor to the Socialist Caucus magazine Turn Left. Dirka, a long time associated with Spilling Bee Canada, is a much sought-after speaker in all of Ontario, and especially London. So welcome again, Dirka.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for that introduction, and revolutionary greetings to everyone. Usually I research a topic and I insert some of my ideas and I present it, but today I am actually going to give some history. Many of you might know that I was born in Vancouver, not raised there, but and lived there for a little while. And so when my grandmother died on the flight back from Trinidad, my mother met a union member who was I think it was someone in the leadership. She couldn't remember his name, but he gifted her this book, and it's called Labor, Work, and Working People, and it's a working class and labor history walking tour in Vancouver, BC. I have not done the tour, but I am familiar with some of the places, but not the stories behind them. But I'd like to share them with you because they tell some stories that resonate even today, and also more importantly, there's one of these stories has a very novel way of dealing with the boss man. So let's start with the Lumber Workers Industrial Union, LWIU, at the Ralph Block Building, 130 West Hastings Street, which is a pretty well-known street in Vancouver. So Aboriginal workers from North Vancouver formed Local 526 of the International Workers of the World in 1906. Soon nicknamed the Bows and Arrows, it was the first union on the Burrard docks. The LWIU also emerged from early wobbly organizing. It won the 8-hour workday for its members, removed tiered bunks in logging camps, and forced companies to supply bedding. The union joined the One Big Union, OBU, in 1919 and withdrew in 1921, taking approximately 25% of the OBU membership with it and sealing the fate of the OBU. The LWIU folded, unfortunately, in 1926, but some of its members joined the Workers' Unity League of the Red International of Labor Unions in 1930, and members of the LWIU also helped found the BC arm of the International Woodworkers of America, IWA, in 1936, and by 1950, the IWA was one of the largest unions in the province. Today, 5% of our population are Indigenous, and they are somewhat more likely to be a union member than the non-Indigenous population. Indigenous union membership is concentrated in the public sector. According to Census Canada, Indigenous people earned less money than non-Indigenous people with the same education unless they had a university degree or were a member of the union.
Shame.
Yes, it is a shame. So as activists, we have to support union membership for Indigenous workers in the private sector in particular and support their efforts to get more equitable education outcomes. So my next story is about tenants, and it's in the downtown east side. And I wouldn't be surprised that they're still doing this kind of activity now. This is pretty close to where I used to go to church. So tenant evictions, Christchurch of China, northeast corner of Pender and Gore. So during the Depression, many families receiving relief or welfare faced starvation and eviction because the government payments did not meet their basic needs. Groups such as the Workers' Unity League, Women's Labor League, and Housewives Leagues, listen who's helping, helped these families in their eviction struggles. In 1986, George North told the Centennial Labor Committee how local citizens attempted to prevent the eviction of a Chinese family at this location in the 1930s. Quote, the Chen family were evicted in spite of a large-scale protest picketing. The sheriff and his crew attacked pickets when they attempted to move furniture back into the house, successfully at first, end quote. A local resident, Barbara Stewart, also remembered the 1930s, open quote. Terrible things were happening. People were being evicted on the sidewalk, children and all. The whole gang of us would go and march everything back into the house. The sheriff would be there. It would be bad enough with no food, let alone no shelter, end quote. Vancouver rooming house operators seeking higher rents attempted to evict 300 tenants on one day alone in April of 1933. And the Lodging and Restaurant Keepers Association also supported 2 general evictions of 150 families in 1933. Terrible. So renter households today are more likely to be comprised of single parents, younger adults, and recent immigrants than owner households. And our fight for affordable, adequate, meaning a dwelling place that needs little to no repairs, and suitable, meaning enough bedrooms for all the residents, is a fight not only for housing, but also for health and human rights. We must do everything we can to win that fight. So here's my final story. And it goes back to the regular downtown Vancouver. Seymour Telephone Exchange, which now is the home of the downtown campus of British Columbia Institute of Technology at 555 Seymour Street. Really nice architecture in that area if you happen to walk there. So women replaced telegraph boys as operators at the new Westminster and Burrard Inlet Telephone Company, which was later called BC Tel and now we all know as TELUS. Once the company discovered that the boys were too mischievous and unreliable to handle the telephone. So the company did not pay women during the training period, which would last as long as 6 months. In 1902, a strike won the women higher wages and sick leave. Previously, the operators paid the wages of their replacements when they called in sick. So the Telephone Workers Union and the phone company joined the sympathy strike called by the Vancouver Trades and Labor Council during the 1919 Winnipeg General Strike. They joined other members of the labor movement who demanded rehiring of the fired Winnipeg strikers. Of all the workers involved in the 1919 General and Sympathy strikes, the telephone workers were the last group to return to work. Other union workers returned to work without retaliation, but BC Tel, being BC Tel, intended to fire operators who had struck and to demote supervisors who participated in the strike. Joined by male linesmen and electricians, good allies, the female telephone workers operators stayed on strike. They held on for a whole 2 weeks after the general strike ended, but eventually they had to return to work on the telephone company's terms, sadly, which included the loss of their own union. In 1981, the Telecommunications Union locked out management, and this at other buildings, at this and other buildings. The workers ran an efficient and enhanced public service without management. So this is called an unstrike, and it pressured BC Tel into signing an improved contract with its workers. So 2 weeks ago was Equal Pay Day. Women in Canada, and I'm sure this group needs no reminding, but we earn nearly 30% less than men, a gap that's even more for racialized, indigenous, two-spirit LGBTQ plus and disabled women. Women are paid less than men in 469 out of 500 occupations across every sector in the economy.
Shame.
So, as activists, shame indeed. As activists, we must demand for women affordable and accessible public childcare with decent wages for childcare workers. This all courtesy of, I have to give some props here to the Canadian Union of Food Workers for this. Build the economy by building the care economy and fully fund public services like the post office. Implement real pay transparency and increase funding for pay equity enforcement. Mandated paid sick days for all workers and raising the minimum wage to what should be a living wage. Thank you for listening, and I hope this history inspires you.
So I'm going to read the greetings, our last May Day greetings, and then we're going to bring on the cultural side of this evening. And in the meantime, we have tickets on sale. So while I'm reading this and then bringing up the first musician, getting set up, we will sell tickets. And don't forget we have Cuban rum.
Yeah. I was walking.
Okay, tickets are $2 each, 3 for $5. Okay, so our last message of the evening for May Day, a political message, and we'll get into our cultural. On a trip, is from Eve England. On a trip to Chicago 25 years ago, I visited the site of the Haymarket Massacre. Unfortunately, there wasn't much marking this important symbol in the struggle for workers' rights and those murdered by the state in the fight for the 8-hour workday. While May 1st is a holiday in 160 countries north of the Rio Grande, it is not widely recognized. The authorities prefer to depoliticalize Labor Day. Yet militant labor activism is more important than ever. Canadian capital has been waging a relentless war on working class organizations, driving Canada's private senior unionization rate to its lowest level in 80 years. Only 15% of private sector workers have the protection of a collective agreement. As a capitalist-attached union, the system concentrates wealth in the hands of an ever smaller elite. Canada's 86 billionaire families control more wealth than the country's 6.2 million least wealthy families. One single Canadian has 150 billion. This grotesque. Billionaires shouldn't exist, nor should anyone with $100 million or even $10 million. For social and ecological reasons, that must change. We need a militant labor movement pushing to replace $1, one vote capitalism with one person, one vote economic democracy. Wherever there's a social labor, there should be a community ownership and workplace democracy. Sorry. May Day is a time to commemorate working class gains and build a movement needed to replace wealth concentrating ecocidal capitalism with a socially just and ecological sustainable economic system. Thanks to everybody for coming out tonight. Capitalism can't be fixed, the banner says. Onward to a socialist future. Eve England.
Yeah.